Hi, I'm Black Wolf, aspiring manga artist, and I created a power system. This video is part one of a series that I'm uploading to the channel known as the world building series. It'll be discussing the world building of the story I'm working on known as the Rage Saga. It'll be discussing all there is to know, basically anything that you would see in a world building showcasing video, such as the world's power system, the different events that happened in that world that led to the current plot of the story, cultures, religions, uh, all those other things. So, today's video is about the power system of my story. So the name of the power system is Altry, an in-universe term derived from the Elven language. It means reflection or to reflect. Now, the reason why I gave it such a name is because of two very important reasons. The first reason being that Altry and the soul have a very close relationship in which the spiritual energy is produced by the soul. And the soul has this ability in which it will change forms according to who you've become over time. Simply because the soul is your true self. The physical body is sort of like a vehicle, and the soul is the driver of said vehicle. And because Altry comes from the soul, it ends up inheriting a similar ability in which it creates abilities that will reflect who you are as a person within that point of time. This usually results in people having one ability in one point of their lives and then having a completely different ability in another point of their lives. Which works for the type of story I'm telling because the main theme of my story does have something to do with the exploration of human nature, the decisions we make, and the consequences that are created by said decisions. So you'll see different characters having different abilities that talk about certain emotional things that have to do with the character. For example, I have a character called Saint Marie who is not exactly the most stable character mentally. So I showcase her madness through her ability, which has this sort of eldritch appearance, something that has to do with madness. That is the main point of the power system. So yeah, even though I still want to have cool fight scenes with my power system, I still want to serve its main purpose, that being a storytelling device. Hence why I made it that characters, and in fact individuals in this world, never ever have a fixed ability. As the character progresses and develops, so would their powers according to how they develop. All living creatures in this world have souls, which means they all have access to Altry. The way in which they would use Altry would be different, where animals would have more simple ways of using Altry, and humans and other intelligent life would have more complex ways of using Altry. Now, there are 4 types of Altry in this world, which can be found in different places. Some of them coexist together in one source, whilst others are completely found isolated. The first one is NOA, or naturally occurring Altry. This Altry is naturally found within the environment. It can be found in concentrated minerals underground. It can be found within the air itself. Basically, anywhere in the environment you can find NOA. The second type is IPA, which is actually the most used type of Altry by Altry users. This is the Altry that is produced by your soul and is always found within living creatures, both animals and intelligent life. The third is divine Altry. This type of Altry could be found in divine beings, in deities that reside within my world. It can also exist in saints, people who have been chosen by said deities to follow their will in that world. And lastly, the most dangerous type of Altry to use, corrupt Altry. 3 out of the 4 of these different types of Altry can exist in living creatures. IPA and corrupt Altry are mainly found within intelligent life. So if you look at animals and look at the type of Altry they possess, it's just IPA. They do not have corrupt Altry. Whilst with intelligent life, it's different, in which both corrupt Altry and IPA is found within the same being. Now, of course, the question would start to form of Why is corrupt Altry within humans and other intelligent life? Well, that is because of how it's made. See, corrupt Altry is created from the act of committing sin against the deities of my world. So every time you do something evil, it doesn't matter how small it is. It can be a simple lie, it can be deceit, it can even go to murder and a bunch of other horrible acts, or just anything remotely not good. All of these would be etched onto your soul and in turn begin corrupting your soul, resulting in the creation of corrupted Altry. Now back to what I've previously mentioned about all living beings having Altry. Yes, that is true. All living beings do have Altry, but not everyone has access to it and in turn can use Altry. There's this extra organ that a person needs in this world in order to be able to use Altry. This organ is known as the Altry core. You gain this organ by being born with it. So there isn't any man-made way or method to create an Altry core. You simply have to be born with it. So unless you're born without an Altry core, you cannot use the Altry that resides within your body. So what causes the Altry core to not be developed within a person's body? Well, this is caused by the ancient human genome. See, in the past, Altry didn't exist in the world. It only existed in the realms where the gods of this world lived in. They eventually decided to gift the humans with the ability to use Altry. And of course, over time, the environment, the animals, and lastly, humans and other intelligent life began to adapt and in turn produce Altry on their own. Despite humans and other animals adapting, the genomes of the humans that existed before Altry was a thing still exists within their DNA. So because of that, it unfortunately results in certain people having parents with that gene being dominant, and it causes them to be born without the Altry core. On to the properties and attributes of Altry. Of course, in this section, we're going to be discussing the different facts about the power system, whether non-Altry users can see Altry, how strong can you become as an Altry user, what Altry looks like, all those other things. Let's start with its appearance. Altry, in its purest form, takes on the appearance of a colored flame with a black center. Of course, the colored parts being the IPA or internally processed Altry, and the black parts being the corrupted Altry. Corrupted Altry actually has weight. The reason why is because of how corrupted Altry is made. Just like I explained in the previous section, corrupted Altry is created through the individual committing sin against the avian. Of course, that results in the creation of corrupted Altry. But during the process of its creation, the sins they've committed are etched onto the soul, of course, resulting in the creation of corrupted Altry. But one of the things that happens during that process is that as the person's sins are etched onto their soul begins to be weighed down on a spiritual level. Of course, once corrupted Altry is created, it ends up being translated to real physical weight, which usually results in Altry users being a bit heavier than they usually would be. This attribute is actually pretty useful for other Altry users because they can use this to figure out how powerful an Altry user is, as well as how corrupted their soul is. For example, if an Altry user expelled all of their Altry out of their body, as an intimidation tactic, depending on how corrupted their soul is or how much Altry they have, everything within the vicinity would be crushed under the weight of their Altry. Altry also gets darker depending on how corrupted your soul is, which is also another way that Altry users can tell how corrupted or how evil another Altry user is. Altry is actually pretty poisonous. I know, confusing, right? Because I explained this whole power system, and now I'm just mentioning out of the blue that the power system is poisonous to the people using it. But it's not poisonous in the way that you think it is. Let me explain. Obviously, for an Altry user, their own Altry wouldn't be poisonous to them because their body has adapted to their Altry. In order for them to be able to use their abilities and use their Altry to their fullest potential, their body would have to have already been adapted to that specific Altry that they have. Altry only becomes poisonous if, let's say, one Altry user forced their own Altry into the body of another Altry user. That's when it becomes poisonous. This phenomenon is known as Altry poisoning, in which the person who had another user's Altry forced into their body, they would die because their body wasn't made to handle the Altry that was just forced into their body. It was made to handle their own Altry. So because that foreign Altry has entered their system, it causes a whole bunch of things to get messed up, and it causes a whole bunch of very dangerous internal injuries that always result in death. Despite this method of killing Altry users being extremely frowned upon in most communities around the world, it was still very much used by some people. In the past, detecting Altry that was left behind by an Altry user was extremely difficult due to how quickly it disappears when the Altry user is no longer present within that area, which made Altry poisoning a very viable method for assassins and all other kinds of groups that specialize in stealth and killing their targets fast. They would use Altry poisoning to kill their targets, because for one, IPA doesn't last long outside of the body. It made it extremely hard, and if not impossible, for people to trace it to the user. The second reason is because of how fast Altry poisoning kills its targets. Anyone exposed to another user's Altry internally would die within 30 seconds and at most 1 minute after exposure. You'd also find wildlife using this exact same method, mainly for hunting and for self-defense purposes. Now, in regards to how Altry changed my world, well, it changed it in many ways, both in the natural sense and also in how technology is made and how certain things are done within human and intelligent societies. One of the changes done to nature was how land masses are formed. You'd see all sorts of things in the environment. You'd see types of land masses that wouldn't exist in a normal Earth. One of them being that they are now floating islands in certain parts of my world. In fact, in the second part of my manga series, there are a few parts of that story that take place on one of these land masses. Because my main character for the second part of my manga series was actually born on those land masses. So of course you'd have a bunch of different story events happening there. The next change that you would notice in my world is the different forms that you can find mountains and hills in. There's now more abstract, more very odd looking shapes. You'd find mountains and hills in spiraling patterns, in circular patterns. You can even find mountains that are like perfect cubes. These are the result of the different minerals created underground by the introduction of NOA. Because now NOA is becoming concentrated in certain areas underground, creating these minerals that do specific things. For example, the floating islands that I mentioned previously, they exist because of a new material known as gravitite, which is a type of Altry concentrated gem stone, which causes whatever it's in contact with to practically lose gravity. So places that are rich in gravitite tend to start breaking off from the ground and become like floating land masses in the air. Gravitite is actually a highly sought after material by other countries because it allows them to create ships, vehicles for civilian transport, and a whole bunch of other things. Now onto the wildlife. Just like how normal humans and other intelligent species were affected by Altry, animals were affected too. They became bigger, more aggressive, mainly because of the fact that some of the animals that got bigger were predators, and because they're bigger now, it caused some sort of misbalance in the ecosystem. So other animals had to adapt and get bigger, but also in turn became more aggressive, and it basically made the wilderness a lot more dangerous to explore. This, in turn, caused a whole lot of problems for the civilizations in my world, in which they were constantly under attack by all sorts of creatures that they just weren't prepared to deal with. So they had to turn to the great minds of their civilizations for help to come up with a new way to deal with these new types of creatures, to somehow control the wildlife, to protect these cities from wide range attacks. And these scientists actually came up with a proper solution, one that was so good that it's still in use tens of thousands of years later in the current storyline. They basically built these giant Altry cores that harness the NOA from the atmosphere and basically turn it into this giant shield that envelops their entire country or an entire city or a town. It was super useful, not only for preventing animal attacks, but also for preventing attacks from enemy countries and other kinds of threats. Now that we've discussed how Altry has affected the world and its environment, I'd like to get more in depth on how it affected the individuals living in my world. I mentioned previously that Altry users are adapted to their own Altry, but I never explained why. The Altry types that users can attain, depending on its functions, can and will harm the individual if their body is not adapted to their Altry. That is why in the womb, as your core is fully developed, the body will recognize your Altry and change on a cellular level to be able to handle it. But as you know, with the body and with nature in general, nothing fully goes according to plan and there will be a few accidents on the way. These mistakes are how we get the 5 different types of Altry users: adapters, non-adapters, over-adapters, late bloomers, and lastly, hybrids. Adapters make up a majority of the Altry users and have no mutations or imperfections. They are the most normal in terms of how an Altry user functions internally. So they're pretty much the vanilla, normal, average, everyday Altry users. Non-adapters are the rarest type of user. Not because it's rare for people to be born as non-adapters, rather it is rare for them to live long. They are generally weak due to their lack of use of their Altry. Over-adapters are people whose bodies added too many changes to their body, resulting in mutations occurring. These mutations are always related to their Altry type and can appear in different forms. For example, let's say you're an Altry user whose Altry allows you to manipulate and create plant life. Because you were born as an over-adapter, it would result in either plant life growing on your body or just having certain parts of your body made entirely out of plant material. These types of Altry users tend to be stronger than normal adapters due to their mutations not only increasing the amount of Altry in their body, but also removing their physical limiters. Late bloomers are simply Altry users who end up adapting to their Altry after birth. The time in which they fully adapt to their Altry can range from either adapting to it as a toddler or just after reaching adulthood. These users tend to live in constant pain before fully adapting due to the body changing internally in real time. This happens when the new human genome from one parent and the old human genome from the other are both dominant. These genes, despite resulting in different things, tend to trigger one another, causing a delay in the adaptation of the body. Apart from this, there's another rare yet more dangerous effect caused by this, known as PSD or pre-sapience disorder. This genetic disorder is the secondary effect of the new and old human genomes clashing, being an underdeveloped Altry core. This is dangerous due to the Altry core being the place that the user's Altry is stored, and as it increases or is used, it causes further damage to the core, which could result in death. Despite the many differences that Altry users can have, there's one thing in common amongst them, which is the fact that they live longer and or have a longer lifespan than non-Altry users. So, I've explained what Altry is, how it can be accessed and used, where it comes from, how it's affected the world, and the individuals living in my world. But I did not discuss the most important part of every power system. How does Altry work? So, we're gonna get into that right now. So when it comes to the basic techniques for experienced Altry users, using their pure Altry, which is the Altry in its purest form, without using the Altry type that they have, is not only inefficient, but very difficult. It takes a lot of focus to even manipulate it in very crude, simple ways. But that does not mean that it's useless. It's actually pretty useful for self-defense and simple amplification of one's physical strength and speed. Here's some examples. The mountain tieflings in my world, they use these simple basic amplification techniques to increase their upper body strength, mainly to increase the power and speed of their spears when hunting or fighting from a distance. Another example that I can use is human Ultra users increasing the durability of their body and increasing their strength to fight on even ground with other human species like orcs, high elves, tieflings, etc. Using Ultra this way is essential to an Ultra user to be a first and last line of defense in a fight. Now, with pure Altry's inefficiency, using your Altry type would be your best option. And it is, because Altry types are more powerful and more versatile. Altry types are the abilities given to the user based on who they are as a person. People change, and because of that, Altry types change too. Are you obsessed with controlling others? Your Altry will reflect that. Are you someone who desperately wanted to save a loved one but failed? Your Altry will, once again, reflect that. As you experience life and go through all sorts of obstacles, your will change form and in turn change your Altry. Now I'm sure you have a bunch of questions about what I've just said. Black Wolf, won't this make your characters overpowered? Doesn't that mean that multiple people can have the same abilities if they experience the same things? To answer those two questions, no and no. It doesn't work that way. You can't gain the exact same Altry type as someone else just because you went through the same thing. Even though Altry types cannot be the same, there's still a way to categorize them into two groups: the unconditional and conditional Altry types. Unconditional Altry types follow less or no rules at all, making them easier to learn and use, whilst conditional Altry types are the opposite. The strength of a user isn't determined by the group that their Altry type falls under, but how they use their Altry. These set of rules mainly apply to the IPA parts of an Altry user, but also partially applies to corrupt Altry as well. When it comes to corrupt Altry users, individuals who intentionally corrupt their souls, the way their Altry works is somewhat different from how pure Altry works. Their Altry still changes over time, but has a power boost and is more lethal than pure Altry. This benefit, however, is a trap. As your soul becomes more corrupted, your desire to commit sin and cause havoc increases, to the point it becomes almost addictive to the user. This is extremely dangerous because it causes the user to become more and more separated from the benevolent deities, which makes it harder for them to save you from becoming what is known as an OCI, or, by its full term, out of control Igari. OCIs are Altry users that become so corrupted that they manifest or birth what is known as the Igari. Igari are manifestations of a user's darkest desires, mainly representing the sin they've committed the most. These creatures are extremely dangerous to have due to their parasitic nature. Because they come from a corrupted soul, they are bound to it. And from the moment they've manifested, they begin to rapidly feed on the user's Altry. When the user's Altry runs out, they start to feed on the user's soul, which when finished results in agonizing death. Igari also takes over the user's body and starts enacting their desires. The Igari's abilities, just like the user's Altry, reflects the user's darkest, most committed sins. For example, if you mostly lied to others, if you were a compulsive liar, your Altry might manifest with a control type of ability, in which people will believe the lies that you make, and in turn, you sort of control them. Or if you were violent and killed many people, it would have abilities tied to that. Like, let's say, a vast amount of weapons it can use, or a very high increase in strength, speed, durability, basically deforming your body to the point where it's built just for killing and murder. Altry users have a small chance of regaining control of their bodies and even controlling their Igari. These individuals are known as vessels. They gain an even larger strength boost than normal corrupt Altry users and can even access their Igari's abilities. This can make Altry users even stronger than over-adapters and even some saints. The drawbacks of using the Igari's abilities, however, is a lack of awareness, losing of one's humanity, losing some of their lifespan per use, and lastly, losing some of the hold they have on the Igari. This makes it easier for the Igari to take over the user's body. Whilst being a vessel can give you immense power, it in return will destroy you, mentally, spiritually, and physically. So if you lived in this world, I, as the author, would highly recommend that you do not use corrupt Altry under any circumstances, let alone allow your soul to be corrupted in the first place. Before the video ends, I just really want to say to any of you guys watching this video, for those that watched for 5 seconds, for those that even watched for like a minute, or those that watched the entire video, thank you so much for, in a way, supporting my channel. I haven't posted in 3 years, and every single time I felt like posting, I don't know why, I just procrastinated. I wasn't very motivated. I didn't know what to post. I didn't have the motivation, the energy to even post videos. But now that I'm doing it again, I have this remotivation to try out YouTube again, so I can spread my story out there, so I can find people who find my story interesting. Posting these videos on YouTube isn't just to show off what I have, it's also to find other people who also find my story interesting, who listen to the power system, maybe the world building, maybe even some of the characters and their backstories, and they think, oh wow, this guy's story is pretty cool, I would love to read that. So again, I'd like to thank you guys for watching this video. If you felt like the video earned your subscription, please subscribe. You can even like the video if you want to. I don't really want to like entice people to subscribe to the channel, because at the end of the day, I want people who genuinely think that this is a pretty cool power system, a pretty cool story. So if you enjoyed this video, you can subscribe and like the video, and don't forget to turn on the notifications so that you can be updated on every single time I post a new video. This is Black Wolf, and I'll see you in the next one.